by being an open book. It's incredible how I've seen it help people. It has literally changed lives.
Hi, everybody. So this is the second part of the two-part episode about Dana Day, who is the owner of Dana Build and Design. In the first episode, Dana shared about her passion for working as a builder, what she enjoys, how it's challenging to her, and she explains more about being selected to appear on HGTV. And it was so wonderful to hear about her passion, but she definitely has a purpose, and it is different than her passion. And so this episode moves on to this purpose, and it's talking about how she lost her younger sister, Leslie, to suicide, and it shook Dana to her core. And she shares more about the feelings that she dealt with and how she processed those. She wants people to know that there is hope, and she is looking at using this unimaginable tragedy for good, and just opening up the conversation and destigmatizing talk about suicide. And she is very open and honest in this conversation, and I really appreciated it. It's probably one of the hardest conversations that I've ever had with anybody on the podcast, but you are going to hear a lot from Dana. Before we move on, I want to say that there are resources if you know somebody or you are struggling with thoughts of suicide. There is a suicide and crisis hotline, and it's as easy as dialing 3 numbers. It's 988. You can also go online to 988lifeline.org. And all of this is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it also is very helpful for people who are looking for support, maybe to help others who are having those thoughts. And so I just wanted to make you aware of those resources. It also shares warning signs, ways to help, do's and don'ts, and more. So please check those out. So I am really glad to share this conversation with Dana. Okay, before we get started, I'd like to thank my sponsor, The Rooted Willow. The Rooted Willow provides non-toxic body products that are rooted in nature. Their products were developed by 2 moms, Danielle and Cody, because they are on a mission to provide non-toxic and ethically sourced body wellness products. Their tallow body lotion and lip balm are my 2 faves. I'd love for you to check them out online, therootedwillowok.com, or on Instagram at therootedwillowok. And now on to the episode. Okay, Dana. Well, I am so thrilled to be talking to you today. We talked about this prior to recording, but this is going to be a difficult conversation, but I know you have shared this is your purpose to share about it, and we're going to get into it. This is something that I know is important to share, and so let's get into it. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to share my story.
I'm happy to have you here. So your story involves a suicide.
It does.
Your sister's suicide. And I wanted to take people back to, before we get into that, in kind of the beginning of, your family, and talk a little bit about your life, growing up with your sister.
I am number 2 of 4 girls. So if you can just imagine all of us trying to get ready in one bathroom. Oh man, we had our fights, but we loved each other. But I'm talking about Leslie. She was our baby sister. So she was 6 years younger than myself.
Okay. So if you'll kind of share a little bit about when you first realized your sister was struggling.
Leslie battled with depression. She was on different medications. She got help with a counselor, but she did struggle with depression the majority of her life.
Okay. So Looking back then, were there any signs that it may have been obvious that she was struggling as far as, to suicide or
Yes.
thinking about considering suicide?
Yes, she actually had a couple attempts prior to. So we knew how serious her feelings were. And she didn't live in Tulsa. She lived in Atlanta. So it wasn't like I saw her all the time. So one of the things I would like to touch on is Leslie did have a couple of attempts. And it is not a cry for help. It is an attempt on their life. They were in the mental state of ending their life. It wasn't to cry out for help. It wasn't to get somebody's attention. You have to look at it as they attempted to end their life.
I know you have a deep faith.
I do.
And so I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about your faith.
Yeah, so I've was raised a Catholic and, went to the church. I had the ceremony every Sunday memorized. Kneel, sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, and then all this stuff. So, but that wasn't what gave me my faith. What gave me my faith was being involved in high school with a group and being open with praying together or talking about different verses and everything. So that's kind of where I established it. But it really wasn't until later in life, and I've always been a prayer. I pray all the time. But it wasn't till later in life that I saw God's work in me. And now, being my age, I can see his work being in me as I'm doing it. Like, I know for a fact that this is my purpose with God. It's a feeling that I have that God is with me. It's something that I can't explain, but it's an all-knowing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gotten stronger,
mm-hmm.
especially over this last year. And to be able to look back and see God's work. I'll give you an example. When I was in college, my first year, I was at Wichita State University. And it was my first real boyfriend, and we had sex for the first time for me. Well, he ended up having a lot of anger issues, and one time he raped me. And so I left the school and I went to Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, right by St. Louis. And I had a degree in psychology. And one of the things that I did was I wanted to be a volunteer for an organization called Call for Help. And it was a suicide hotline and a rape advocacy. So the interview process was tremendous. I can look back now with some of his questions and answers that I didn't understand, that now I do. But my very first phone call being at the suicide hotline was a little boy, a young teenager at a telephone booth contemplating suicide. It was awe-shocking to me, but I was able to get him help. And that feeling was amazing. Like, I'm in college. I'm in a sorority. There's parties in school, and my friends would be like, why are you doing that? That's so down and it's so dark. And why would you want that in your life? And I'd be like, did you save a life today? Did you get a lady that is being beaten by her husband? Did you get her shelter? Did you get somebody food? Did you help a schizophrenic out of one of their episodes? Because that's what I did today. I was honored to do it, proud of myself. But I had no idea what God had intentions for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just did it.
Mm-hmm.
Skipping years later, with my sister, everything I learned in college went out the window with her.
Because it was personal.
It was personal.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I learned to do, to say, it went out the window. A suicide death. You're not only having a loss, it's different than having a loss with somebody who's sick. With suicide, it's so sudden. You almost feel like you've been abandoned by that person. And you have anger, but the guilt and the regret that comes with suicide. When I went to suicide grief counseling, they said a death of a child is the absolute worst. Suicide is number 2, because the feelings that everybody has, what if I would have only done this, changed that, said this, been there, answered that phone call. She called me the day that she committed suicide. And I didn't answer. I was in a movie. And I didn't call her back. Huge guilt. Leslie and I were very close. We had a promise. If she was going down that road, she would call me. Well, promises don't work. Don't ever think, oh, well, they promised me that they wouldn't do that, so they won't. So I feel certain that they're going to be okay. Don't ever assume. Don't assume that. That's what I did. If I could let everybody understand, you did the best you could with the circumstances that you were given. I blamed myself. I posted on Facebook to blame me. I was her sister. I was the reason. And what I mean by that is she was on medication and it made her stomach hurt. So she asked me, what should she do? Well, we need to get off that medicine, get you onto new medicine. Well, anytime you switch medicines, you're at risk. You're at risk. And during that time, she was going deeper and deeper into a depression. And she called me one day and she said, I think I need to be admitted. And I said, Leslie, we've had this conversation. We've had this conversation about, she was the most successful person in her business. She won award after award, not only in the United States, but over in Japan. They would send her to Japan to teach them how she sold. She was the number one. She had a great job, but she was always worried if they found out, if she went to somewhere, they would find out and they would let her go. So she told me, Dana, don't ever let me go in. Again, another promise. Don't ever let me go in. And so I told her, Leslie, let's just wait for this new medicine to kick in and see how it makes you feel. And then she committed suicide. I blamed myself. I went to my mom, went on my knees and asked her for forgiveness and begged for mercy. The pain I went through was so enormous. I remember praying to God saying, please, dear God, don't give me more than what I can handle. Please. And these are things that I posted on Facebook. I poured my heart out on Facebook. I thought that this Facebook page was a private page, and it wasn't. So as I was pouring my heart out, and then I had 3 different private messages telling me that I have seen what you've gone through, and I would never want any of my family members to go through this. So they went and got help. And they said, you saved my life. You showed me a different perspective. And I would never want to do that to anybody else. I realized then sharing my emotions affected people. And I had a nagging thing in my brain, in my thoughts. Write a book, write a book, write a book, speak. You got to speak about this. I know that's God telling me, be an open book, speak about this. You will change and save lives. Well, at that time in my life, I was barely holding on. I know what it feels like to have the suicidal thoughts, to be so dark and deep and such in a black hole. You know, people would come to me and they would say, this is something never to say. Don't ever say this to anybody. They would say to me, it was selfish. All the pain that you're going through, all the pain that we're all going through, it was so selfish of her to think of just herself. Well, since I experienced that deep, dark hole myself, I was able to say, I guarantee you, I know 100%, they are not thinking about anybody else. They're not thinking about themselves. You are in such a dark place. All you can think about is stopping the pain. That is it. Stopping the pain.
Okay. I have heard that. I've heard about that being a selfish act, and you know, I don't have any personal experience with this and have not, you know, talked to anybody that's experienced it, but I think it's one of those myths that is out there about it being selfish. And so I'm glad that you spoke to that too, and the depth of that depression. From what you've said, I know it's gripping. And I am so very sorry for the loss of, you know, that you experienced with your sister all these years later. And I know you've probably talked about it, but you're finally able to share that with others on a bigger platform.
Yeah. So I went through my own personal growth, my own personal journey a few years ago. And when I was kind of in a good space, again, that thought, that voice in my head, which is God, told me, you're ready.
I want to take a short break to share my next live event. It's a live podcast event called Conversations with Passion and Purpose on Friday, May 9th from 11:30 to 1 in Tulsa. My special guest is going to be Muriel Juneberry Berrien. She is the creative mastermind behind Strawberry Shortcake and the Care Bears. She's best known for bringing her beloved characters to life, well, and for her fun kitchen dances on social media. Muriel will share the story of her artistic journey from the early beginnings to creating some of the most iconic characters in pop culture. So this conversation, you will hear how she stays inspired, her daily habits that set her up for success, and how her positive outlook has shaped her life and career. Whether you're an aspiring artist, a fan of her work, or simply looking for a dose of creativity and motivation, this is an event you won't want to miss. This is a room that you will want to be in. The women are incredible. The conversations and connections are amazing. And I would love to see you connect, learn, and grow through this conversation. So to purchase tickets, go to sharingpassionandpurpose.com, hit the event link, and you will be able to purchase tickets. And I would love to see you there.
You're ready. And so then I put it on Facebook. I'm going to become a speaker someday. I want to tell my story. And my old babysitter that lives in Houston says, I want you to get in touch with my friend, Todd. He's a speaker. And I met with him. And he took the time to do my timeline and to help me. And he's like, you really need to write a book. I was like, I'm a creator type. I'm a builder, remodeler. Doing this detailed writing a book thing is not in my personality wheelhouse at all. So I struggled with writing a book and the guilt that I was feeling about not doing it, knowing that I'm ready. I need to speak. God, I finally have my purpose. I know my purpose, and I see the stepping stones in my past that God has led me here to this day to be ready to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing such a good job talking about it, because this is something nobody wants to talk about. This is the subject. I even told you before we started recording, for me, this is going to be, a difficult conversation for sure.
It is. Every time I talk about my sister, I well up. My eyes get tears in them. That will never go away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I blamed myself for so long. I even posted it on Facebook. I'll read it to you. So this is just an example of my mindset at the time after that I posted on Facebook that everybody saw. I said, for all of you who feel guilt and regret, you shouldn't. I was her big sister and best friend. I'm the one who didn't listen when she asked for help. Blame me for your pain. She trusted me and respected me, so she took my advice, which led her to no other choice but to end hers. I look back at that and please, for anybody out there, that is not yours to carry. That is not your pain to bear. I've done such deep therapy. I even went and did a lot of energy work. It was very important to me that I knew, being Catholic, if you commit suicide, you're going to hell. That was what I was raised. It's very important to me to know that she went to heaven. So I did all this. I did a lot of energy work. One of the things that she had me do was visualize Leslie right before, and then visualize, was God there? And I saw him. He was there. He was there with her. That changed everything for me. Leslie was battling deep, deep depression and demons from her past. And no matter what advice I gave her or didn't give her, this was her choice. And I don't mean by a selfish choice. But this was going to happen, no matter what I was going to say or do. It wasn't like I could drive over there and help her. I didn't know that she was going down that hole. So I just implore anybody who is feeling guilt and regret, it naturally comes with it. But don't blame yourself, because anger does come with suicide. I know this. I found her pack of cigarettes, red marbles, and I was like, screw you, I'm going to start smoking at the age of like 40 something. Hadn't touched a cigarette and, so I started smoking. I started smoking at night. I saw the stars, I would talk to her, I was with her, I felt closer to her. Oh my God, all I did was self-harm. So I immediately, stopped that finally after about 3 years. But self-harm, hurting yourself doesn't make any difference either. But I encourage you, get help. There is suicide grief counseling. Pray. You're not alone. I remember in my darkest times, I felt when God lifted me up. And I felt a year and a half later when God set me down on my tippy toe, just one tippy toe. And he was saying to me, you're ready to go back to life. I didn't understand that impact until later. What that feeling, that is faith.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean by faith. He had me, just like he had Leslie.
So after Leslie committed suicide, then how did you get through those first few years?
I went through grief counseling, suicide grief counseling. I saw my normal therapist. Definitely had to get on anxiety medicine, up my dosage of depression. But one of the things that suicide death brings also is a lot of physical elements. I just thought it was my stress level and stuff, but now I read, and it's actually a common trait. I developed really bad IBS-C. And I developed not being able to sleep. I was fatigued. I was so tired. And I just, it's all mental. But those are things that haven't really, the fatigue has gone away, but those are things that my body changed when that happened. So it's common that if you go through that, just know that that is common. And it's okay to talk to a therapist. It's okay to get on anxiety medicine to get you through things. It's okay to get on sleeping medicine if your mind will not shut off. It's okay. Give yourself grace. I tell that to my friends and my family all the time. Give yourself grace. Would you talk to your best friend or your son or daughter the way that you talk to yourself? No, you wouldn't. Give yourself grace. Journal. Writing your feelings down. You're going to get angry. You're going to get sad. You're going to go through all of those emotions. And by knowing that and knowing that it's normal, when you go through it, you'll be like, okay, this is the process. This is the process. This is normal. Knowing that something is normal when you're going through such enormous feelings is a comforting feeling.
Thank you for sharing that, because I didn't know, but it makes complete sense about how your body reacts in that type of situation. And it's going to vary for everybody, but just sharing what you went through, somebody can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. That's my purpose, is if I feel like being an open book, sharing my experiences, not just with this, but I have a whole life of terrible experiences that I've had to go through and learn. And I had to learn to give myself grace.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing that all the challenges that you have overcome.
Looking back at it now, I was telling one of my friends yesterday, you remember when we were kids and, somebody would say, you need to listen to that person because they're wise. They're older and wise. And I'd be like, yeah, they're old. Now, when you pass 50, I was telling my friend, now you're past 50, girl, you're wise.
Exactly.
We are the old wise people now. Wise means you can look back and see the stepping stones to get you to where you are today. You can look back. And what that does by seeing that, it makes you more intuitive today. I am so intuitive now. It's scary. You're more observant. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. You have that knowledge that you can pass along. And some people don't choose to pass it along. So we're blessed that you're opening up and sharing this.
Yeah. By being an open book, it's incredible how I've seen it help people. It has literally changed lives. And I mean, the 3 people just with the suicide, but how many other people did it help? So yes, I want to get out of my comfort zone. I want to move forward and try to help people. I want to inspire, help, change, encourage.
Mm-hmm. You're definitely doing that. Okay, so on that note, then I'm going to wrap up with this question, this last question. So you say you want to encourage. So what piece of advice or encouragement would you share for others who have experienced loss of someone close to them due to suicide?
I feel sharing your feelings is probably the most powerful form of therapy you can do. If that's with a therapist, or if that's with your best friend, or if that's on Facebook spewing out your feelings, however you want to do it, getting your feelings out there. What it does is it makes you acknowledge, this is how I felt. In that way, you will give yourself grace. You'll look back and say, I wouldn't say that to my daughter, or I wouldn't say that to my best friend. Speaking it out loud puts it in a different dimension. It makes your feelings real. And I also feel like when you say your feelings out loud, you're also accountable for those feelings. You're not just thinking them. You're putting something out in the universe. You've started that energy. So my biggest advice, first, don't blame yourself. Have grace. The guilt and regret, it does get easier with time. Give yourself grace. Love yourself. If you're a Christian, a religious person, imagine where God is right now with you. That was huge for me. Where was God at the time of the suicide? Picture that in your mind. Those are things that I feel will help.
Okay, undoubtedly, they're going to help. And I know and pray that the people who are meant to hear this podcast are listening to it right now, and they've heard your words. They've heard your encouragement. They've heard your pain. And I appreciate you being such an open book and sharing today.
Thank you so much for having me. I would not be able to do this without you. You're one of my stepping stones, so I appreciate you.
I'm honored to help you share your story. And I just appreciate it so much. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate you being here. And don't forget to connect with me on social media. Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn are at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter is at Passion Sharing. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.